Tuesday, December 11th. I'm Scott.
I'm Rim.
And this is the Geeknights Book Club. And tonight we discuss A Wizard of Earthsea. Let's do this.
As I said on the show last night, I took Wednesday off to go skiing. I'd planned this for quite some time. I was looking forward to it. I figured on a Wednesday, no one would be out there, and it had been beautiful weather. According to the mountain, they even had a half a foot of powder up there. So Tuesday night, I'm getting all my stuff together.
That's enough? Like 6 inches? Doesn't seem that much.
Well, and like 2 or 3 feet of other snow.
Oh, okay.
But no, I mean, there's basically, anytime you ski, there's two surfaces. There's like the underneath, and then there's what's on top.
Uh-huh.
Like you'll have the pack down underneath.
Isn't there underneath dirt?
Well, I guess, yeah.
And rocks?
And then there's the mantle,
Roots.
and then there's the magma, and then there's the bitter, horrible core.
Yeah, you go to the skiing website. What are the conditions today? Bedrock. It's not looking too good.
Well, I do recall last year when I went skiing again for the first time with Skojo that it was in spring, basically, and there was this path of snow, and then either side was green grass.
Man, I could imagine, like, what if you're skiing and there's an earthquake?
Anyway, so, I'm all set for this. I packed all my stuff together. I'm getting ready to go. I look in the weather, and it's going to be like 50 degrees, and it's going to rain.
It's going to rain.
And sure enough, it rained.
And it was 50 degrees.
The conditions went from packed powder with a first layer of powder to loose granular, which is a code word for crap.
Okay.
So I basically...
Why do they even say, like loose grow? Why don't they just say good, ski today, or bad, don't ski today?
Well, they kind of do, but there's different kinds of good ski. Like, some people like to ski on packed powder because it's easy and you can go real fast, but some people like powder because you can kind of float in it and it's really cool and you make a big mess.
But it's like, they should just be like skiable, unskiable, and then, put the details there for the people who care. But, most people just care skiable, unskiable.
Loose granular is perfectly skiable. The only problem with it is that it was also raining.
Uh-huh.
Imagine skiing in the cold rain. Yeah. Imagine being outside.
Maybe the mountain's above the clouds and you'll be all right.
No, I looked on the website. I looked at the webcam. It did not look happy up there.
Webcam is a very good idea for the skiing.
Yeah.
Did you see anyone skiing on the webcam?
No. No one. Even the website, they were like, great skiing later in the week.
Okay.
So, God damn it.
That's the thing. It's like, farmers, their, livelihood is controlled by weather, but no, they can irrigate and such. Ski mountains, that's money that's controlled by weather.
Yep, and you know what? They haven't been doing well lately around here.
No, you gotta go to someplace colder and northern, or go to Canada or Vermont or something.
Yeah, well, pretty much I looked. I would have had to driven 2.5 more hours north to properly ski, so I figured it wasn't worth it. Especially in that sunfire, which probably wouldn't make it back.
You just ski back.
You know what the sad thing is? Ski technology being what it is, the skis I have would be basically worthless for cross-country skiing.
Uh-huh.
They can only go down, and they can only go fast.
So they can't go up?
Kinda, but not so great.
Well, fast is what you want for getting home, right?
Yeah, but only if I'm going downhill. These are for going at an angle like that, not so much like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I took off Tuesday next week. I'm hoping I can ski then.
Why don't you look at the forecast before you pick the days?
You know what? When I picked the day, the forecast said...
What'd you look at, the Farmer's Almanac?
The forecast said it's gonna be cold.
The forecast isn't accurate till you get close.
Yes, but I'd already taken the days off.
You gotta be within 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I've already planned 2 weeks of next year's vacation. I'm taking good days.
You got the next year's Farmer's Almanac?
Well, no, other than skiing, most of the stuff I'm doing next year is go to Japan or go to a convention or go to see Barack Obama.
Waste your time. All right. So you want to do things of the day before we talk about the books?
We should probably do some things of the day. My ulterior motive is that it's actually easier when doing the show to do things of the day than to not do them, because I never really wrote my awesome make the granular, the modular show script. So it's basically The script's always going to put the thing of the day music in the middle. So if I don't do a thing of the day, it's actually much more difficult to not have that there.
All right, so so check this out. This dude drew a funny picture.
Funny in a ha-ha way or funny in a slightly offensive way?
Both. It's
Too soon?
I don't know. He drew the picture of the Twin Towers, but they are cartoonish Twin Towers. One of them is like sort of got sad, droopy eyes and sticking his tongue out. And the other one's got like an O mouth, like, oh no. And he's
wait, you said O mouth.
yeah. And his eyebrows are up in the air like he's surprised and dismayed. And they have little, cartoony arms and legs. And they both have, airplanes stuck in their heads.
As is expected.
Right. And it says soft 9/11. And his, I guess it's what? His wife. Yeah, his wife, based on this doodle, made plush Twin Towers.
Oh my.
One of which looks like it has the flu, and one of which is like, oh no.
Oh
they even
my.
got like the little logos on the planes here. And, some people, it's weird because if you forget about the fact that this references a horrible event, right? They're really cute. Just on, right?
That's kind of the problem Emily's been having reading Hitalia, because it's adorable and hilarious, but at the same time, the jokes are all about horrible wars from the pre-World War I era.
Yeah, it's difficult. And also, right, so all the people who post comments, on all the various places this has been posted, right? Some people are like, oh man, it's like everyone's torn. Like everyone. But Boing Boing actually did something pretty smart, right? They were like, look at this, right? And then they're like, I know you might think that this is in poor taste. But then they're like, if you think that's in poor taste, look at this. And the link went to one of those 9/11 commemorative coins. And they're like, yeah, if you think this is tasteless, look at that. And they're like, this has heart. That's just, money grubbing, disgusting bullshit. So it's like, okay, all right, this we can accept, in that, it's not making fun of anyone. It's not saying like, if you, fuck you, people who died in 9/11. It's not saying anything like that. It's not saying terrorism good. It's just, portraying an event in a way that, lets you think about it more easily.
I guess it helps that I'm generally actually very much a fan of tasteless humor if presented in a clever manner.
Yes, I just don't want to say something 100% tasteless on my show.
Well, you know what?
Because I'm not a big fan of producing tasteless humor.
Having seen these, I can't call it tasteless because it's
in good taste.
It's well played, good sir.
Well played indeed. He can make a lot of money. People want to buy him. Yeah. I actually had an idea once to make a contest, and the contest would be submit the most tasteless thing you can possibly make, and see what people toss in there. But
the style project, it's already been done.
No. Like this is like, you got to go for it.
I don't know. I think the style project went for it.
No, not really. I already thought of ideas that were worse.
Anyway, my thing of the day, this is a college humor, but I can't really pass this up. And everyone, you might have seen links to this and just ignored it. No, watch it, because it's so fantastically done. It is 40 inspirational speeches from movies cut together into one contiguous speech. And let me tell you, it is fantastic.
See, what he did that was clever, right? Is he took, the inspirational speech slowly mounting music, and instead of taking the music from the movies and having them go, right, he put the one music behind the whole thing.
I think what helps is that it starts out kind of standard. You got Braveheart, the Mighty Ducks are in there, but or Independence Day is in there, but then there's a lot of really unexpected things in there that really just add to it, and they make it brilliant as a result.
Yeah.
I mean,
having seen most of them, it really adds to it. Like, if you have no idea what any of these are, it's like, okay. But knowing what the majority of them are is like, oh.
You've got to get mad.
I'm not going to take it anymore. Say what again?
Saith what to mine ears again, good sir?
You don't remember
What
that
didst
very
thou
well.
say? No, I don't at all. Right, so it's the Geeknights book club. It's back
Did you
again.
read? Read a book.
Read a book.
See, because we were having trouble getting people to read the books, because many people were, I don't know, illiterate. Even though I'd like to think Geeknights is a show for smarter peoples,
Look,
and that
kids,
people who listen to Geeknights will be smart and read.
It takes 4 hours to read A Wizard of Earthsea.
I read this book in 4 hours.
I'm talking 4 distracted hours. I started reading it on the train this morning. I finished it just now.
I thought you started reading it yesterday.
Well, I read like 10 pages of it, and then I played NS.
You suck. I read it 2 hours one day, 2 hours the next day, boom, done, right? So I knew this book. This is the reason I chose this book, right? Number one, easy to read, but not so easy to read. It's insignificant. I mean, I guess I could have chosen Cat in the Hat, but, that's
The Little Prince is easy to read.
That's a good one.
That doesn't make it bad.
Maybe I'll do it next time. Yeah, but this is,
Be warned, the shorter books you pick, the longer ones I will pick in retaliation.
This is easier to read, but, significant. Still enough book to be significant in quality. Also, it's a fantasy book, which nerds like, right? Third, it's sort of like one of those it's weird because it's sort of like the odd fantasy series out. It's like you got the Lord of the Rings and you got your what's it called?
Your what? What other what
the Narnias, right?
Yeah.
And then the Earthsea is sort of like the in between, and it's not like totally forgotten, like people know it, but it's not super big, Well, it's definitely not Harry Potter big either. I guess that's fantasy.
Even though I'm
technically.
going to say it straight up, Harry Potter. I'm not going to say it drew
It's poop
from this at all.
Sucks.
But if you want a story about a young boy going to wizard school and becoming a wizard, Harry Potter is not the story you want to read.
I think actually, if you do like it's sort of like a Naruto thing, right? Naruto, they start out with ninja school, but the ninja school is gone after like 5 episodes, right? In Earthsea, right? At least in this first book, the wizard school is there for a bit, It's mostly if you look at the whole series, the wizard school is like nothing. And Harry Potter, at least I haven't read, more than part of one book of it, which is
I can't
either. But
I can watch the movies.
As
I
far
enjoy
as
the movies.
my understanding of it is that the majority of it is wizard school. It's like with the wizard school is the setting. This is a world setting where a wizard school is one thing in the world setting.
Having trouble there?
A little burping. Anyway, the other reason I chose this book is because there was a terrible sci-fi miniseries based on it.
That was not the only bad thing based on it.
Well, and there was a Studio Ghibli, not a Miyazaki movie. Well, wasn't it Miyazaki's son?
Yes.
Or something like that. It was a Studio Ghibli movie based on this series.
Well, we're not going to talk about that.
Which I haven't seen, no. But, it's, I think... the author of the book, Ursula K. LeGuin, who is the amazing sci-fi fantasy author of all time, she plain didn't like the sci-fi thing. And
Geto Senki,
I think Geto Senki, I think she said, if I remember correctly, she didn't say it was good or bad. She just said, it's his, it's not mine. It's his story. So I don't get the feeling she wasn't like a huge fan of it either. So, this thing that people are trying to make works of, I think people should be encouraged to read the real deal, lest they, get bad ideas about it. It's really the people trying to adapt this thing are the failed, and it's not a matter of the original thing being failed.
Well, what has been said of Geto Senki primarily is that it has...
Yeah, well, I haven't seen it.
But people have said that it has nothing to do with Earthsea except that they call the guy Ged.
Well, I think to start right off the bat, right? The first thing that the miniseries and I'm pretty sure Ged Senki get wrong is they make Ged white. He's not white. Almost no one in this book is white.
Except the jerk barbarian invaders.
The jerk barbarians invaders are basically just Vikings, right? So they're white and blonde.
And the bad people in the north who knew where the stone is.
Yeah, they were white.
There's the stone.
Right, the enchantress chick, right? She was white. Or no, she was like the enchantress daughter. I don't know. And I think the archmage was white-ish, mostly white. But everyone else in this book is like black or like, dark.
Well, they make the
reddish,
distinction between
brown.
between the brown black and the red black.
Yeah, I sort of imagine it in my mind as like, like the Native American color and then like an African color, sort of like that. But anyway, it's just really interesting because you don't think, most fantasy stuff. I mean, look at the Lord of the Rings, right? Everyone
It's
is
all white dudes.
All white dudes, right? And it's like the book isn't about.
Well, think about it, Scott. Gandalf the white.
Well, he's also Gandalf the gray.
Saruman the white.
Yeah, but I mean, the only things that aren't white are like, fucking orcs and elves and shit.
Also, I note that anyway. I'm not going to make all the jokes I could make about Lord of the Rings.
But I think what's really interesting about it, right, is like if you went to the movie theater and you watched like a medieval, fantasy movie where like the powerful wizards were like, African Americans, suddenly like race would be an issue in that. But like in the book, race is not an issue. They just sort of, it's just like, yeah, the people aren't white.
Well, I think
they don't make a deal out of it. It has no effect on the story. Race is not an issue at all. It's just, people are different colors.
Of course. I think part of the reason we see this sort of thing is that most Western-style fantasy is set in a generically Western medieval type setting.
medieval times were in Europe where white people lived. And so when you think of, actual medieval stuff, you think of, European people. And fantasy worlds tend to be, medieval European worlds plus magic.
But at the same time, I feel like someone who reads this book and doesn't pay attention would just automatically assume that the characters were white, or at least were the same color as them, because it doesn't
if you're a Western person, probably. If you don't read carefully and realize, the two words that say his skin was dark red.
Because it only gets mentioned a couple times. Of course, that's actually the thing I find most interesting about this book, is because I'll admit, part of the reason I was looking forward to this is that despite all the wide reading I've done, I'd never actually read any of the Earthsea books. And I was really not familiar with Ursula K. LeGuin's style of writing at all. And this book is, I mean, a lot of people would say it's at the level of a middle schooler and that anyone can read this book.
Well, the reading level is middle school. A middle school kid could read it, understand the story, and possibly even, read between the lines a bit.
But at the same time, part of that...
And it's appropriate subject material.
It's not because it writes, or I guess reads down to anyone, and it doesn't even shy away from difficult words or very, very subtle interplay, but it's not like Harry Potter where the writing is simplistic and terrible. I'm sorry, but those books are written so badly. Like, it bothers me. Every word just like burns into my soul. But the style of this book is very terse, very to the point, and it's very descriptive, but it's not descriptive of Ged. It kind of is like you're being told the story of Ged from afar and from a far future.
Yeah, it's definitely, how in like The Hobbit, right? At the end of The Hobbit, you sort of get that Bilbo writing The Hobbit thing going on. And it's like, am I reading the book that Bilbo wrote, or am I reading someone telling me about Bilbo writing the book at this, that sort of situation? But this is clearly, someone who, it's weird. It's almost like this omniscient narrator, right? And they're telling you what really happened. Like, they know, right? But there are books in the history of the world in which this takes place, in the history of the world of Earthsea. Ged, the main character here, is, like, he is the Gandalf. He is the big bad wizard. This is not like a spoiler. They tell you this right up front, right? That, Ged is like the ultimate wizard in the history of this world, like, the major historical figure, and you're getting his story from the beginning here. And he's, so in that world where there's this great wizard, obviously later on, there become books in this world about the great wizard, just like we have books in our world about, great generals and historical figures, So this narrator will say things like, oh yeah, and then this happened, but you won't find that in the Tales of Ged, as if the Tales of Ged are a book that exists in the world. It's pretty cool.
Yes, well, I particularly like how many times and this could be done to very poor effect, and I'm sure there are a lot of authors who have done this poorly, but the book always gives little asides and says things like, Ged sees a certain land in the distance from a ship, And as an aside, the narrator just informs you, but it wouldn't be for many years that he actually set foot in those lands and saw the blah, blah, blahs of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, actually, what it was talking about there was the Tombs of Atuan, which is the second book. In the second book, he goes to the Tombs of Atuan.
It mentioned that's actually the second part. That's with the old people living on that shoal in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Now, I was speaking about the very beginning of the book. There's a whole other thing they reference.
Mm-hmm.
But it happens often, and it's done very well and to very good effect. And it's interesting how a lot of books you'll know how they end, or at least you know that the main characters will succeed, but yet at the same time, you're full of suspense as to whether or not they will succeed. But this book, I was never, I know they'll succeed, and I know absolutely, and I never doubt it, and I never have that suspense. Instead, I read it the same way I read a history book, in that I'm desperate to find out how he succeeds and why and what happens and what the story was.
Mm-hmm.
But it was never a question of, will he make it?
He's good. There's a bunch more books. Yes, he's gonna make it. It says so straight up.
But there are books where I know they make it, but yet I still fear for the characters.
Yeah, there are.
This book does not do that, and I think it's a strong point for
Well,
once.
I think I fear for some of the characters, but not,
and they don't all make it.
No, they don't all make it, but the ones that are gonna make it are gonna make it. The others are, more momentary. But Rim, what is the one thing I always complain about in, fantasy books?
Scott, you always will read a fantasy book and there's the awesome old wizard and you hear the stories about the awesome old days when the awesome old wizard is an awesome old shit. But the book is always about today when everything sucks.
Exactly, right? You read the fantasy book, right? And it's like all these characters, like the knights and the wizards, will be saying, back in the day with the old powers. The old powers are always stronger than the new powers. Back in the day, there were dragons everywhere. Nowadays, if you find a dragon in a cave, you're lucky. But,
of course, there's the Prince of Nothing, which takes the take of, look, everything in the old days was great, and then everything went to crap. And you know what? The old days are back right now. This is the new old days.
That's true. But this book, right, there is some amount of old days in this book. There used to be more dragons and such. But this book is the story of Ged, who is the Gandalf. It's like, you don't really hear them talking about, this great old wizard. There aren't a lot of names of historical figures. They don't talk about great kings of the past or anything like that.
When they do, the interesting part is it's always indirectly, and you never get these. It's not like a Tolkien book where
you don't even know, you sort of get the idea that there's these islands in the middle, sort of, where there are great kingdoms, or at least the biggest kingdoms around, but they don't really talk about them. They don't really have an effect so much, really. Maybe a couple times they mention oh, yeah, not in, a very civilized, highly densely populated place like this island, Oh,
but no, what I'm saying is that when you hear about history in the context of this book, you don't hear about it directly. You hear about it indirectly through the times when it is noted that a character or a group of people were singing the tales of ancient days, the verbal, unwritten stories that are not widely known throughout the entire world of Earthsea.
Yep.
And it's very, Burning Wheel, the songs of the elves, the songs of the ages, or Tolkien, the songs of the ages. But what it really evokes, maybe partly because I just finished reading that history of the Peloponnesian Wars as seen from the Persian side, even though it totally copped out and just talks about the Greeks for the whole second half. But it talks a lot about the idea that the Greeks during the Peloponnesian War period, the history they had before that was so steeped in myth that it wasn't even a history. What they looked at as history was the Odyssey,
Cyclopeans,
and the Iliad, and the Trojan War, and things that barely ever even existed. The fact that their actual history was so new that it went back to purely mythological origins, or origins so lost to time that all you had left were these kind of fantastic stories of, heroes from the Age of Heroes and the Trojan Wars and all that sort of thing. And this world feels that old. It feels like, most fantasy books are kind of Middle Ages, but this one feels more like Greek ages. You've got archipelagos, you've got, oared ships with barely a concept of how to truly use sails.
Yeah, boats are really, really important. And they have sails, but they're not, good sails like in a British Navy. It's just mostly flat sheets. And then wizards, move the wind to keep the boats going sail-wise rather than, and mostly just to keep the boats from sinking, not to make them go fast so much.
But they've got trireme-style technology here, and their armor and weapons, what little is known about them, whenever, things like that aren't brought up often, are clearly bronze-made for the most part, except for the few iron wielders, and it's very much... This is more early Greek history than Middle European history, which does really lend itself to the fact that there aren't really white people.
Yeah.
I like the fact that the setting is different like that.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, as I was saying, I'm always looking for, where's the story of, the great times, the golden age when, there was the most magic going around. And, the Silmarillion sort of offers that, but the Silmarillion isn't really a character narrative. It's more like, a few separate short stories. It reads almost like like the Bible, sort of disjointed and all these separate parts that don't really flow so much.
Plus, I'll be honest, what happens in the times of the Silmarillion basically amount to epic level characters in D&D.
With a million Balrogs and dragons.
No, it's like, all right, we're playing
OMG.
D&D, and we're all playing 10th level characters, and we're all like Gandalf the Grey, and we're going around. And then the DM says, this is boring. Let's play epic level. Let's all be 40th level badasses fighting other 40th level badasses.
Well, I forged the greatest artifacts of all time that are so great they'll be in the player's handbook.
That's what I got from the Silmarillion,
yeah,
I'll be honest.
But Earthsea tells you the story of the wizard. I mean, Ged is the wizard, the number one, he's got people who are above him, at least during the story, right? You've got Ogion, who's fucking awesome.
Hey, he's the man.
Ogion, I think, is my favorite dude in the whole book.
He reminds me of Odin so much.
Kind of. He's definitely my favorite character in the whole book. He's all quiet, but like he's super. Anyone who's super wise like that always gets.
You like the quiet, wise ones.
I like the quiet, wise ones a lot
because you're neither quiet nor wise.
Oh. No, I'm wise. And you got the guys at the wizard school, right, who run it, and I think the best of which is probably my second favorite character, the doorkeeper.
The doorkeeper,
right? And they're great wizards and all, greater than Ged is at the moment. But it's like they all recognize that Ged is like either going to be like the worst thing ever or the best thing ever. And while they're great wizards, they're not like all powerful, can't stop me now. They're just strong wizards, and magic, while it can do a lot, isn't super strong, and it usually has a high price and requires a great deal of knowledge.
But
so
they
don't do it.
The feeling of that and like the sense you get of the state of the world and the fact that these wizards, as powerful as they are not super powerful, I think also harkens back to the setting and the time period, and that the whole feel of the book is much older than almost all fantasy books I read. It's set in a time, it feels so ancient, like very little came before it.
Mm-hmm.
And that more than anything defines this book. Of course, that might just be the fact that I've been reading a lot of Greek history lately.
It could be. You always seem to, whatever you read lately, you always tie into everything else you do.
But at the same time, it is true that the setting is very Greek, like early
It
Greek.
is. It almost like other books, right? They'll talk about the time of a billion dragons, right? And when they talk about it, it feels like there was a civilization then, and that, it's now we're just farther on in the civilization.
Yes,
this book, it really feels like in the times that are older than this book, when there were a lot of dragons, there wasn't really civilization as much. And even now, a lot of places like, that he goes to that place for a time near the Dragon Mountain, whatever, where it's really not that civilized. It's like a bunch of little separate islands, and each person lives on one island, and they're not doing too well. And it's very sort of it's like one or two steps past cave people, And the only place that really has civilization at all is the magic school. Every other place is sort of like very primitive.
It's kind of like when you look at the same the same time period of the real world, where there were civilizations that came before, but they were few, far between, and are so lost to history and shrouded that they're already barely legends to the people who live.
Mm-hmm. And it almost feels like, the time of a lot of dragons in this book is almost like the time of dinosaurs, in the real world. It's like, yeah, there used to be a bunch of dinosaurs or dragons or whatever, but there was no one around then, so it's not really an interesting time to talk about as much.
I definitely get the sense that reading, because having read nothing else, this is the book that talks about kind of the dawn of civilization on a true scale. And like, that's the point where the world really starts changing. And then if it were a standard fantasy book, it takes place like 100 years after this book.
Yep. All right, let's talk about some interesting scenes, right?
All right.
So
first off, could anyone but a middle schooler be surprised that all he had to do to beat the shadow, spoilers by the way, was say his own name?
Well, no, they sort of, it's all right. So let's talk about the main plot thread here.
Which
right?
I just want to say was obvious the moment the dragon said he knew what the thing's name was. Like,
I knew it before then, but maybe that's because it's the second time I've read. No. So check this out, right? So normally when you have like a hero character, especially someone who's like try to think for a second, right? You only ever see Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings when he's old and already powerful, right? Do you ever try to think about like what the history of Gandalf was? Like what was Gandalf growing up? How about Merlin? What was Merlin like, I guess, growing down, right? Right? So what was it like? Was he...
Well, I have read Elminster, Making of a Mage, and by the way, if any of you have seen this book, burn it! Burn it!
So, all right, so what was Elminster like when he grew up? Did he go to like little wizard school?
You know what?
Was he a punk?
You know what?
Was he...
Yes. You know what? I'm pretty sure that Elminster, Making of a Mage, was stolen wholesale from A Wizard of Earthsea.
Really?
And in fact, I feel cheapened for having read that book.
See, because that's one thing. When you try to, if you see someone who's wise and great, right? Someone who's like the mage, right? You think about their history, and you can only fill it with like wiseness and greatness. But you can't imagine possibly. Look at this. You're the greatest wizard in this entire world ever, like the most major historical figure, and in his early days, just some like country bumpkin kid, right?
Who furthermore
and then when he went to
because he done fucked up.
Right, and then he fucks up twice. He gets fooled a bunch of times, right? And when he goes to wizard school, he's totally prideful and assish, you know, even though and they give you that other character, Jasper, right? Who is like to show you this contrast of like, look, here's the typical prideful asshole guy. What normally happens when there's a prideful asshole guy in a book? Well, he ends up failing in the end. He didn't get his wizard staff and he is the lose, right? But here, they competing with him is the other prideful guy, Ged, which is so atypical for, you know, a character like that, especially the main good guy character, to be all prideful and whatever. And what happens to him? Oh, he totally makes it in the end. Yeah, it's all good, right? Where else do you see a story like that? I don't see one.
Well, in Elminster, Making of a Mage.
No, but what happens, right? The main plot thread, right? He casts this spell he shouldn't be doing. So you know he's up to no good, right? A bad monster shows up, but Ojian saves him, right? And warns him. So he's, right? Then later on, right? He's got, you know, half of him is all nice and cool, right? And that's, you know, he's got the two friends at wizard school. Well, not friends. One, Jasper's not his friend, but you got Jasper and, you know, Vetch / Australian or Estar or whatever.
Well, you shouldn't say his true name.
I know, right?
Yes.
We'll talk about that in a minute, right? And that's sort of like you combine them and you get Ged at that point, right? Half of him is like the wise, awesome, cool, good, friendly, loving dude, and half of him is the prideful asshole dude. And then, you know, he casts a spell and the black monster he comes out when he's doing something he shouldn't do. And what, obviously the metaphor, and as from that point on, he does learn his lesson and now he's just, you know, good and smart and not prideful or assholish anymore. Obviously, all that pridefulness and assholishness went into the black monster-y shadow thing, which is now separate from him. It's, you know,
and of course they keep bringing up through the whole book. Well, Ursula K. LeGuin keeps bringing up through the whole book that there can't be darkness without light and light without darkness. You can't have words without silence and silence without words.
Yeah.
Both sides needed, come together whole.
It's the typical Adam Warlock, you know, from Marvel Comics story where all the Magus comes out and it's the good side and the bad side are split up into two separate beings and in the end they had to combine and whatever.
You know, it's funny. I just watched an old episode of South Park that I just must have never watched, where Cartman has that exact same thing happen to him.
Oh, there's evil Cartman and good Cartman? They split up and then he splits into two?
They don't actually split into two, but there's the inner battle and it's hilarious.
Oh, the inner battle.
But the inner battle spills out into the real world in a hilarious way.
Well, in a way, right? This is an inner battle. The shadow, while it sort of has a manifestation, isn't really a being. You know, as soon as he decides, I'm going to go and get this shadow, the Shadow's on the run. Well, why would the Shadow suddenly be on the run if it was, it was much more powerful than he was? Because it's actually inside of him. It's not really, this outside being. That's why he just sort of, he's following his gut feeling when he's chasing it down, because he's chasing it down inside of himself. He's not actually chasing down. Well, he is and he isn't actually chasing down a physical, magical thing to beat it up.
To chase it down, he leaves all magic. He gets to the edge of the world to where there's pretty much no magic or anything he's known before.
Yeah, there's more about the edge of the world later.
Yeah, I figured.
And, he even goes to death's door to, I guess, chase down / get away from this thing. Like when he's he's trying to save that kid's life, and he pretty much goes all the way. It's sort of like a Full Metal Alchemist. You go all the way to the evil door, and then you come back.
Oh, that evil door.
Yeah.
I was disappointed with what that evil door was when...
Well, in Full Metal Alchemist, I was disappointed, but in Earthsea, I was not.
No.
It's like when he's, going down and, the kid's getting away, and he's like, and then there's that whole, getting there is real quick, but then, there's that long, it's like a couple of pages describing how he gets back from, the land of death, where he's it's like he's walking uphill in sand, and every step is harder than the last. It reminds me of, a lot of those D&D worlds where the demons are trying to escape from whatever demon world it is, and the farther away they get, there's more gravity pulling them back, and it's it's pretty good. I don't know, I think that it's sort of like the same thing. It's like when he goes to the end of the world at the end of the book, it really feels like he's going to the death's door that he was at before. You could imagine it being the same place, but I'm not quite sure because I don't remember the other books as much.
So
Well,
I can say this, and I can say this openly. It's a fantastic book, and anyone, of course, you've all read it, but you should convince other people to read it.
And you should, if you like the book, there's a whole bunch more. There's Tombs of Atuan and Tahanu. And,
it takes 4 hours to read.
Yeah, and it's cheap too. What was it on Amazon? I bought it at the bookstore for $8. All right, that was the bookstore price. Amazon price got to be
Of course, I note that the book you bought, Earthsea, now an original miniseries event.
That
from
was the cheap.
Sci-Fi
They had a more
Channel.
expensive one there, and I felt like. Thing is, I already owned all the books, but someone has them. I don't know who has them, and so I had to go and buy another one real quick because I was like, "Oh shit, the show was on Thursday, crap!" So on Monday, I went to get it, and then I read it Monday, Tuesday, read it Wednesday, Thursday, and that was that.
Do we have anything else more to say about this book? It's short enough to where, other than saying, "Man, that scene was awesome." Yeah, what about that scene?
I got a few that scenes was awesome. One, right, when he's in the wizard school, right, and the master patterner, right? And they don't tell you what goes on there.
I like that a lot.
It's there's that grove, right? And it's a Chekhov's gun with the grove, right? You can't get to the Grove of Illidan, you can go there later. And then later he finally gets to go to the Grove of Illidan.
And it's literally he went to the grove and learned many things and came out of the grove.
Yeah, it's the master patterner was there, and the things he teaches you there are sort of crazy. And in one way, I felt like it was a cop-out, didn't want to describe what the master patterner does. And never, but on the other hand, it's whoa, they still kept it a secret from us. This omniscient narrator kept a secret from us what goes on in the Grove of Illidan. It's that's some pretty rough
But there
shit.
are things you shouldn't know.
Yeah, I guess there are. Also, the whole thing with the doorkeeper, right? It's if you think about what the doorkeeper does even more, it's he really is the doorkeeper. Because right, in this world, we got to talk about, the true names of things, right? To have security, right, especially at a wizard school, they got to know the names of all these wizard kids, right? Otherwise, the wizard kids can go nuts and they got nothing on them. So to get into the wizard school, he's got to tell the doorkeeper his real name.
But you can only get your true name if someone tells it to you.
Well, that you get it, earlier in life. It's your bar mitzvah, someone tells it to you.
But you have to, he was given his name by the Grey Wizard.
That's true. So, he goes, and when he goes into the wizard school, he's got to give up his name to the wizard school, thus, ensuring the security of the wizard school.
It's kind of like how RIT wouldn't give your transcript back if you still owed him money.
Exactly. Right? And then, on the way out, you got to, the doorkeeper won't let you out until you tell him his name. It's you figured my name out, now you can leave. And it's as soon as you go in the wizard school, you give up all your freedom in exchange for, the incredible learnings and power. It's that's the price you pay. And then you can get your freedom back, sort of once you proved you're the real deal. And then, how when he figures out the name of the doorkeeper to get out, and he basically says he says the cleverest thing. He's like, you keep a narrow door. Let me go sit and grow thinner, so may I pass through.
Yep, but then he comes back and says, well, I can't figure it out.
He's like, there's no way I can guess, and I can't kill you to get through.
But I'll leave if you'll answer one question for me.
Yeah, what's your name? It's like, and it totally works. And it's like they don't even tell you the dude's name. They're just like, and he told him his name, and he repeated it back to him, and then he walked out. I like that part.
Yeah, plus I like the way true names are taken kind of to an extra extent here compared to a lot of other
that's like the
fantasy.
secondary, I don't know, I think it's maybe not even a secondary, but like the other primary, theme of the book.
Well, the fact that the world itself is nothing more than the slowly spoken words of the stars.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, and think about that, right? So the true names of things hold power. When you say, true names of things, right, aren't just, there is not like some objective name thing. It's the names of things as dragon. It's the dragon language, right? Whatever dragons call things is what they are.
I really like the fact, though, that because dragons converse in the old tongue, they're the only beings that know how to lie in it.
Yeah.
But humans, because of their nature, can only speak the truth in that tongue because it's the tongue that truly names things.
It's like if you're saying the true names of things, you can't possibly lie, but a dragon can.
Because they're older and smarter than you.
And by saying the true names of things, that's where the magic comes from, right? You say the name of a rock, to get power over that rock. It's like the true name of the bird to have it come to him, and stuff like that. But notice how when they get to the end of the world, closer to the edge, magic works differently over there. It's like he's like, yeah, and my island all the way over here, so far from the center of the world, spells that used to work don't work or act strangely. Yet I see other people with different spells that are working. So it's like they don't fully explain the science of the magic, but it's really interesting how it's like maybe dragons over, is it the dragon, the power comes from the dragons, and whatever they called things in that part of the world is where the power comes from? Or is it the power is somehow our power of belief? So
what actually would make a lot of sense?
The words, if there's enough power in those words where they're spoken often here or they are known here, that it's like there's a rock over on this side of the world. Well, there were never dragons calling it this name over here, so it doesn't know that that's its name, and thus it doesn't have any power over it here.
Because it does point out several times in the book that we're so far from places that the things out here didn't even know their own names.
Yep, it's like, how does Ged get his true name? Someone tells it to him. It's what he's called. Someone calls him that, right? So in the middle of the world where the dragons were, right, dragons called the rocks by that name, and thus that name has power over those rocks. But
what really makes sense? I can't spoil the other books. Well, the other books that aren't these
that
books.
You haven't read.
But think about how the magic in the Prince of Nothing works. If you take it to be the exact same system, the exact same way magic works on a fundamental level, then it kind of makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's sort of similar. But it's a really interesting way for, the magic to work and simultaneously get a message across about, the importance of names,
Symbolism.
Oh my God, it's not a shallow book.
Despite being short.
Despite being short. Short and deep. That's the way I like it. Nice and easy. Get a lot out of it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else awesome going on here.
Pretty much the most awesome part for me was when dragons can lie in that tongue, but humans can't.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And how he gets the dragon.
Yeah.
Right?
Blah, 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 blah. By the way, I know your name.
Yeah, and it's like, why did he know his name? Well, because,
he guessed.
He guessed based on a story he heard. And it's like all, the power of wizards isn't in this book. I mean, he has some sort of natural affinity to, magics, right? But power in this book really is knowledge, right? It's like he's a quick learner, and that's why he's so powerful. He learned quicker than everyone else. He knows more names of things. It came easily to him. It's not about, I have more midichlorians or the force is strong with me.
Midichlorians.
Or it's not about, I have magic items or I have more levels. It's I know more. I know more names of things, and I learn these things easily, and that's why I'm the most powerful, because I am more knowledgeable. And knowledge is where magic comes from. Whoever knows more magic. It's not, can you, manipulate your hands in such a way or any, sort of skill like that. Or
Yeah,
any,
but at the same time, some people, even if they're otherwise bright, just don't have the gift.
Well, yeah, that's, the other part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. They didn't go too deeply into that.
So, moving on, I mean, we have to choose the next book, and I believe it's...
All right, so we're done with the Earthseas?
Do you have anything more to say?
I don't know. I feel like I have something more to say, but none's coming to mind.
Yeah, well...
I feel like we should conclude, though. It's a great book. There's other books in the series.
Should all be read.
Yeah, you didn't read any more except the first one, though.
No, but I will.
See, the thing is, the second book actually, gets there, right? At least he's there in books 2 and 3, as far as I remember. I only read these things once way back, and someone has my copy, so I don't know. But I remember, at least in, Tombs of Atuan, he's there, but he's not, the main character. It's it's about someone else, but, he's there, And then, they sort of get into later on, kings and things like that, which is... The way they do that is actually completely... Well, the way she does that is actually completely different from the way other books have handled it yet again. So it's double whammies upcoming. All right.
So I actually had a lot of trouble trying to decide what book I want to choose, because the deal was that Scott could pick any book in the world.
And I picked one. I gave it to you, listeners. I picked a book that was good for you, not a book. Well, it was kind of good for me, but more good for you than it was.
Scott, was it good for you?
It was good.
Because it was good for me.
I know.
Real good.
But, I picked a book that would satisfy the listeners. I had the listeners in mind that I made my selection. I don't know if Rim's going to be so generous. He might, just be like, yeah, fuck you all, Ulysses.
I don't like that book.
Or he might just be like, yeah, fuck you all, War and Peace.
I don't like that book either.
I'm just saying.
But my trouble is that while Scott gives one to you in that he picks something that you will clearly enjoy and probably read, my brand of giving one to you is forcing you to read something that you otherwise wouldn't read, but yet is a fantastic work. However...
But yet you might have a hard time reading because apparently you're all illiterate.
However, I'm not going to pick The Count of Monte Cristo because while it is one of my favorite novels ever...
Actually, I just read an interview with Jason and, the comic guy.
Yep.
And he was like, yeah, Dumas uses 5 words when he could use 1.
Well, you know what? He was paid by the line.
I know, but he did The Last Musketeer, and he's like, yeah, I tried to read The Three Musketeers, I didn't finish it.
I remember in particular... The Count of Monte Cristo spends 3 paragraphs describing the chainmail that he's wearing at one point.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm not going to pick something like that. So I wanted to pick a book that I haven't read, that I'm going to read soon, that's in my queue. But I looked at my queue, and it is 50% fantasy. And I want to get away from fantasy, because we've been talking a lot about fantasy. Prince of Nothing, this... And at the same time, all the other books in my queue are non-fiction, and I don't think you want to read a history of the Peloponnesian Wars or contemporary Greek history like Xenophon or Herodotus.
Herodotus.
No, it's Herodotus.
Quiet you.
Captain Agricola.
I don't know. So what are you gonna give the people? Are you gonna throw the people something that's Roman, or maybe you're gonna give them some of your Victor Hugo, you Frenchophile? Is that what you're going to do?
I don't like Victor Hugo. Who says I'm even a Francophile?
Oh, you know it.
I'm more of a Greco-Romanophile, if anything.
Yeah, you're Europhile.
But only Southern Europe, or...
France is North, South, East, and West Europe. In fact, it's in the middle, except for Germany, which is more in the middle.
So I kind of narrowed it down to... on one hand, I might want to do A Farewell to Arms, because I really do like Hemingway. And while The Sun Also Rises is a better book that meant more to me, everyone's read The Sun Also Rises. At least I hope everyone's read The Sun Also Rises.
I've read The Sun All Rises. I've read Old Man in the Sea. I did not read Farewell to Arms. But you know what? That's one for the listeners, because Hemingway's really easy.
It is. It was dark. I was drinking coffee.
It's like
it
the Cat in the Hat was long.
The window was open.
Yeah.
It was dark outside.
It's like reading The Cat in the Hat 20 times. You just read a Hemingway book.
No, it's reading The Cat in the Hat if the cat was depressed and drank all the time to cover up his horrible...
That's what it's about. I mean, the
if you
cat breaks into the house and molests children. It's pretty dark.
if you want to get a taste of Hemingway without reading a full Hemingway, just read A Clean, Well-Lit Place, because that encapsulates pretty much everything that Hemingway ever wrote into one concise short story. But I don't feel like a lot of people have read Farewell to Arms, and of all the books I've read in my life...
Oh God, Chainsaw Juggler.
Of all the books... I have no idea how he died.
When in Rome.
That book has perhaps the most cold, depressing end I've ever seen, because it hits you like a brick, and then the book ends with not even so much as a
Is it
denouement.
typical everyone dies at the end shit?
No, it's even worse than that. The book basically...
How could it be? I mean, I've read, so many things with, purposefully depressing endings. How could you possibly, do worse?
Because
than...
it hits you in such a horrible, cold, ham-fisted manner. It's like you're reading, and then someone comes out and says something, and the main character walks away, and that's the end. Like, that's it. It's like, bam, done. And it really affected me, because I read this book in middle school, and it was really sad. It was perhaps the saddest thing I'd ever read up to that point.
Do we have this book?
I have a couple copies of it.
All right, good. So I don't want to buy anything.
I have a small collection of first editions of books I really
So is
like.
the book you've decided on?
Maybe not, though, because I have a first edition of, anyway, skipping all that. But the other option, which I partly want to talk about because the book is very relevant to a lot of things going on in society right now, and I have more social commentary to say than I do commentary about the book, and it would probably be a 2-hour show, and Scott and I both just read it recently.
Yeah,
so...
that's what, if you pick this one, this is one for us because we just read it and we don't have to read it again.
No,
if you pick Farewell to Arms, we have to go and read it, but if you pick
you have to read it. I've read Farewell to Arms like 4 times.
If you pick this book, we don't have to read shit because we just read it. So...
Hyperion is like one of the best books I've read.
Yeah, the thing is, that's not one for the listeners who are all illiterate because it's longish. It took me a few days to read. Oh my God, days. And it's hard. Like, it's not a baby book.
Well, plus,
a middle school kid wouldn't get it.
If you're not terribly literate, you better know your Keats, at least a little. Or at least
yeah, it's like if you don't have knowledge of, like, art history, at least a little bit, and Keats and poetry and things, you're not gonna get a lot of the book.
I mean, I would
it's like, and you have to know like sci-fi, you have to know like detective noir.
It helps to have read the Canterbury Tales, even though I'm going to say this.
I haven't read the Canterbury Tales.
The Canterbury Tales are not entertaining and are not worth reading, except as an exercise in literary frustration.
It's like
I hate the Canterbury Tales.
To get everything there is to get from Hyperion, you have to be a smart and well-read person. Otherwise, it will do nothing for you, and you'll just be like, what the fuck?
Of course, the other problem is you would all hate us because you get to the end of Hyperion and you look up.
You got to read Fall of Hyperion.
Yes.
Or otherwise you got nothing.
But not only that, all the social commentary I have, all the relevant discussion about what we are doing to ourselves as a society now, and the fact that reading Hyperion and Fall of Hyperion has changed in a few not insubstantial ways my political views.
The thing is, there's also Endymion and Rise of Endymion. Which
you don't need those, though, I don't think.
I didn't read. I know, they tell you at the end of Fall of Hyperion, like, what is going to happen in Endymion. But then I look at those 2 Endymion books, and they're real big, so I wonder, like, what the fuck is in those?
But at the same time, I don't feel like it matters.
It doesn't matter that much, because there's really only one thing that is left a mystery, and it's not a mystery that you really need to know.
Yeah, as opposed to Hyperion, which doesn't
leaves every mystery and then explains them all in Fall of Hyperion.
But at the same time,
except for one,
is such an incredibly satisfying book.
Oh, it's real satisfying.
And yeah, I have a couple. The other option, the third option that
you got a third option
that I really, really want to do because I don't feel like enough people have read it, and I have some interesting takes on it. I've read this a couple times in my life, not contiguously, but the Odyssey.
Okay.
Homer's Odyssey.
I've read parts of the Odyssey a few times. I've never read the whole thing all at once.
I'll admit, I'm kind of ashamed to admit that I've never actually read the Iliad or several other of these great works.
The Aeneid or whatever
but
it is.
I've read the Odyssey several times, partly because I really dig Athena, and I don't like Odysseus that much.
You know who my man is?
Your man is probably Poseidon.
That's
that
right.
asshole.
That's right.
You know what? Poseidon's an ass, and I'll say it to
Poseidon
his
is
face.
the fucking man. No one beats Poseidon because
You know who beats Poseidon? Athena beats Poseidon every time because while Poseidon is strong, he is stupid. He is a stupid motherfucker.
Yeah, but you know what? Everyone's afraid of him because you know what? You can't get anywhere without a boat. Can't get anywhere without a boat. And every time anyone gets in a boat, they're like, please, Poseidon, don't tip me over and drown me, please. Oh, my God.
You know what? I will
and
not...
sometimes he goes, I will let you go. But I will actually, even though I will let you go and live, I will steer you to a horrible island with a monster on it. But other times Poseidon goes, you know what? I'm just going to fuck you. You drown. Ha, ha, ha.
See, unlike you, I will not prostrate myself before gods.
Yeah, so what? Poseidon's just gonna tip your ass over.
Yeah,
and you'll
you know
go,
what?
Poseidon, I'm so smart and you're so stupid. He'll be like, yeah, but you're so dead.
But at the same time, all I have to do is be Odysseus-like enough to where Athena will totally have my back.
Totally stupid.
See,
how to beat Poseidon's and his stupidity, but anger. Be just as stupid.
See, the thing is, Odysseus isn't stupid.
He's not that stupid.
He's clever, really clever. It's just reading the Odyssey the most recent time I read it, I got a different perception from the other couple times I'd read it. And instead of seeing him as this clever, amazing man, I kind of saw him as this brute who just kept making things worse. And then when things got bad enough, he'd do something miraculous to get himself out of it and then make it all bad again.
Lucky.
But everything he does is of his own skill. It's just he could have avoided all that in the first place by not continuing to yell insults back at the island after he escaped, for one.
Good job.
So, should I do Farewell to Arms or the Odyssey or Hyperion?
Well, you have to pick. It's up to you. It's not don't put it out for a vote.
You know what? I'm doing A Farewell to Arms.
All right.
That is my book. Ernest Hemingway's A Farewell to Arms. I recommend it.
Hello to legs.
If you've never read Hemingway before, I really would recommend reading, I believe it's called A Clean, Well-Lit Place, but I might be mistaken. And then from there, read Farewell to Arms. And yeah, that's my book.
All right.
I think it's good. Also, for those of you who are worried that it'll be boring, it's kind of an action story. There are several surprising moments of harrowing, heroic action.
I should pick Old Man in the Sea just to continue making it even easier.
But it'll... So we're going to end on what? Where's Waldo?
No, where's Waldo? I spy.
With my little eye.
Something red. Oh, man, there it is. Say it. Aaron, did you spy the button on page 5? Oh, no. Did you see the paperclip on page 6? Oh, shit.
All right. On that note, I think we're done. This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Audio. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.